Hello, and welcome to the Author Roundup, a special segment of the Book Connection Show where we meet up and coming indie authors and talk to them about their recently released books. Hello, welcome to another episode of the Author Roundup. My name is Jenny, and today we get to meet another indie author and talk to him about his most recent book. He's an ex-teacher, a football coach, and a storyteller with a passion for thrillers. He holds a Bachelor of Science in History from Western Kentucky University and is the author of four gripping books: Oyster Catcher Killers, All Fracked Up, a horror story, The Last of the Soul Searchers, and his latest release, The Jackpot Killer. We're in for an intriguing conversation today as our guest shares insights into his writing journey and his new book. Please join me in welcoming the author of The Jackpot Killer, David Ashby. Hello, David.
Hey, Jenny. Thanks for the honor of being on your show. Really appreciate that. It's a good way to talk to folks about the insights in my book. So thank you very much.
It's my pleasure. So, David, I introduced you earlier, and I think that's quite a short introduction. Is there something you would like to add to that so we'll get to know you better?
I'm a pretty complex, multifaceted kind of guy. Basically, I was served in the United States military on an aircraft carrier. In fact, I think I'm one of the few people that's not a pilot that actually landed on the deck of an aircraft carrier on what they call a prop plane, actually. And it was an amazing situation. The rope catching us in the sequence coming down 200 miles an hour, and then it catches you. So it was an amazing episode. But I like to think that I like to talk about places that I've hiked and I've camped and I've whitewater rapid, and I ride electric bike, I'm skiing, snow skiing. So I don't stay in one place very long. And all four of my books have the same common thread of me researching that area, so I know it like the back of my hand. So when I talk about the Saratown Mountains, or I talk about right now Mammoth Cave, trust me, I've been in Mammoth Cave intimately, so I know the book has got some really good detail in it and observation. So, and that's about, I'm a dad of three boys. All three of them served in the military too. Two in the Navy and one in the Army, and they're all three doing real well. So I'm proud of that. I got 10 grandchildren. They call me Pappy. So yeah, I'm kind of a multifaceted guy. So
interesting. And the author of four books, right? So tell us about your latest release, The Jackpot Killer.
Jackpot Killer is a very complex, multi-dimensional saga. You may be reading part of it and say, this is not following, I can't follow this, or what have you. But trust and believe. I will tie it all together at the very end of the book. It's very complicated because it's a projection. It's a projection of 10 years. It talks about AI. One of the top things. It talks about climate. We've seen what Francine did to North Carolina mountains. So we talk about those things in a 10-year, projected 10 years down the road. I also talk about international tensions like Hamas and Israel, basically the Ukrainian crisis with Russia, Taiwan, and China. There's an international stress in our world right now, and I wanted to kind of bring that to fruition 10 years down the road. I also talk a little bit about interrelations with China, trying to get, because we owe Chinese a lot of money. I mean, basically billions and billions of dollars. I mean, if you had a debt collector and you owed them that kind of money, they're going to take measures to secure those funds back financially. And I'm feeling that the United States is going to pay a heavy debt in the future. So that's also projected in my book. Those three areas: climate, AI, and also our international relations with countries like China, Russia, basically are all in that book as a projection.
I see. So the main character of The Jackpot Killer is Sean McGregor, right? So tell us what inspired his character and his journey.
Well, Sean basically is a very unusual character. He's suffered tragedy, traumas early in his life, thus becoming an alcoholic. We've seen people like that every day in our world, basically, that are being traumatized by things on a day-to-day basis. Their struggles are not documented, but his struggle in my book is documented. And how at the very end, their compassion for humanity, their great heart. We've all known people that struggle with things, but at the end, because they're survivors, they basically are triumphant over the things that have traumatized them. So that's very important to remember about Sean. Sean was an Uber driver. He was in the last of the soul searchers. He was basically an Uber driver that had psychic vision to whether or not people are going to do good or bad or evil things. Kind of like Stephen King's that movie he had about the Dead Zone. Same type of premise. This guy is able to do these things. Therefore, he's caught in an intergalactic war. The Jackpot Killer, it takes off where he's been let out of a mental institution. He has a neurochip placed in his brain, behavior modification, kind of like a dog behind an electric fence type scenario. He's controlled. He's a lab rat. And this book takes it from that type of control to the very end where basically he is the savior of humanity. So there's a progression in this book. He's an alcoholic. He's trying to desperately. He's confused. He's a disoriented fella. But in the end, in the climax, his huge heart shines through in the climax of the novel. So that's the story of humanity. That's the story of an everyday type of protagonist. So that's what I've written him to be.
How did you conceptualize the world of the Jackpot Killer, especially its dystopian elements?
Well, I'm glad that you asked that, Jenny, because I did research, and surprisingly, there are a lot of correlations in dystopian elements. We're talking about Brave New World, 1984, Orwellian concepts, they call them. And there's 4 or 5 I like to mention. And those in his books and his creation, there's totalitarianism is basically mentioned quite a bit. And we're under a matrix of Chinese rule. They have taken over the industrial military complex of the United States to get their debt paid back to them. In fact, they were touring Charleston Harbor, and they're going on a cruise ship. And as they were, they didn't know that hypersonic missiles was right up under. They didn't know underneath at Fort Sumner there was hypersonic missiles that were planted at the southeastern portion of the United States if there was any disobedience to their matrix, to their plan. So the Chinese influence of totalitarianism is very prevalent in my book. Also, environmental destruction. Environmental destruction be emphasized by Francine in this. Basically, it's happened, most destructive hurricane ever in the mountains. We have a more of the destruction of the environment also in this dystopia. Also, loss of individualism. When we can get DNA basically from anywhere, if you clone a human being, how are you going to predict that they were on a crime? We use DNA every day in the criminal justice system, but if it's basically a duplication in society, what are we going to use then to find culprits of murders and homicides and things like that? Because the cloning process involves DNA. DNA, yeah, we found it. We'll go ahead. How can you refute you were there? Your DNA was there. Well, in a world where everything is basically not what it seems to be, that DNA could belong to anybody. That's something to think about. We lose individualism. We have drones that fly above us, that have cameras on us, surveillance system. That's also a component of my book as well. That's called an Orwellian concept of loss of individualism. Restricted freedom. Again, we have cameras and zones. We have dramatic conflict across the globe. In fact, Orwell created different states that he called basically or nations that are going through the same conflict. There was a book written by Control Through Fear, The Sum of All Fears by Tom Clancy. And we'll give them all the things to be petrified about. When you're petrified and scared, you're easily to be controlled. And that's another concept of Orwell as well. And then technical control. Technologically, we're controlled already by different types of programs, applications, financially, extortion, criminal. All those things are also elements of the future of the Jackpot Killer. So I would like, and those comparisons are very true, very real. So I wanted to stress that as well.
What message were you hoping to convey about redemption and free will?
Well, the free will basically is something that Sean opposed from the very. In fact, I use Braveheart when he goes freedom. When basically he's being, murdered or put to death. Sean says the same thing: freedom. He's being controlled by a Neuralink chip, and he wants so much to be able to be a salvation, to be able to use his own integrated personality to achieve his goals. I mean, there's one scene in the book where he's standing over the process of the Inaki, and his heart goes out to all the people that's being done to. It's in Man with the Cave. But anyway, make a long story short, you can see his heart as it projected through the book. Even though he's had so much trauma and so much tragedy in his life, there's that soul that shines through, the human soul. We're not talking about AI here. We're talking about a human, compassionate individual, even though he's making that progress. He basically makes that progress where he wants to be the savior of humanity. So you see it starting at the beginning when he's controllable with the alcoholism. Alexis, the character in the book, guiding him around by the nose, but then he basically makes the evolution to who Sean really is, and that's the savior, and that's the ability to survive and also to overcome any obstacle he has in this book, any trauma. So there is a progress in the book. It starts that way, but at the end, you're going to love Sean. Sean's got a great heart.
So, David, you mentioned AI, right? So, what inspired the idea for the AI implant?
Basically, the neurochip link that Elon Musk talks about, and I know that when I'm through my research, I discovered that that's being used quite a bit for people that's had brain damage or spinal issues, and it can't walk anymore. The Neuralink chip can be put in there and give these people like war veterans, people that face trauma, or that the ability to walk again, which I think is amazing. That's going to be Neuralink is going to be everywhere. And so when I read about Elon Musk and the abilities that it has, I wanted to spotcast that in my book because that's one of the positive elements of AI. AI can be used in so many different ways, and we're seeing it the ramifications in society right now. Deep fakes. We're going to use a video fakes. There's all kinds of people, all kinds of ways you can use AI technology in a harmful way. This is an example of using AI to benefit mankind. So there's two avenues we can approach with it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you also mentioned earlier about the Anunnaki. Why did you choose them to be the antagonists in this book?
They're basically Babylonian, Samaritan, and also Persian. There's in those particular religions or nationalities, they're known because they're broadly. It's not like they're the Arcturians, which is in my book, or a minimal Anunnaki, known basically to be rulers of mankind, to take our resources, not only humanity but also interbreed with us, to find leaders like innovative leaders like Copernicus, Galileo. All these people are claiming or been claimed to have Anunnaki ancestry. That's why they're able to be changes or people that make visionaries, pioneers, like to be able to change society. However, the Anunnaki basically bred with humans. They were found in the rulers of the Tigris Euphrates River, basically, and they're also a generation. I've been with humanity since the beginning of time. They're a powerful group of aliens. They're not just a subordinate. They are the dominant breed of extraterrestrials. If you want to buy into all the conspiracy people out there that talk about UFOs and things like that, I wanted to kind of tap into that to give you guys some exposure in this book as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so this time, David, let's talk about your journey as an author. How long did it take you to complete this book, The Jackpot Killer?
It took between the writing of the book, the editing, is almost 2.5 years. So that's the average for me. I've been writing for over 10 years. Each book is about a 2 year, 2.5, all fracked up was over 400 and some odd pages. That was my longest book. This one's only about 280, but it did take me a lot to do. Obviously, the toughest part of the book is writing about the future and projecting that into the book, using your imagination. Basically, no longer do we travel on the highways because they were tore up in 2025. I talk about all kinds of conspiracy theories like COVID and how it basically related to our society. I talk about the rapture of the Bible. There's so many elements that I had to use a lot of visionary type of details too. And my imagination, my creativity, I was able to kind of project a world of 2033. And that was probably the most difficult part of the book.
Okay, so that's the challenging aspect of writing your book, writing about the future. How about the fun part? Is there something fun, or what part of the book is fun to write?
Well, I'm an adventurer. I go whitewater rafting, kayaking, skiing. All four of my books have been written about a specific geographic area I'm very, very familiar with, whether it be hiking with my sons, colleagues, hiking groups. So I intimately know these areas. And I think writing about Man in the Cave was the funnest part of my book because that's where the climax of the book takes place. There's 486 miles that have been mapped on geographically through the what we call karst topography, which lends itself to erosion. In Kentucky, that led to about 486 miles of underground caverns that had been explored. There's still 600 miles they've never even looked at. So those areas at 600 undiscovered miles underneath the ground is amazing to me, and it basically instills imagination, creativity. In fact, that's where I'm not going to give it away, but that's the climax of the book. But I hike all kinds of basically sinkholes. There's tremendous sinkholes. There's hydraulics involved. There is so much involved with Mammoth Cave, and I love hiking that area. So it's very fun for me to describe that area. It's very much fun to describe it, Beautiful. It's beautiful. If you get an opportunity, please come to Mammoth Cave. It's beautiful.
Okay, so that was fun for you, writing about the places there in the book. So your book has been out for a few months now, and I know a lot of people have already read it. What reactions or reviews from readers have surprised you the most, or had the most impact, or the greatest impact on you?
Well, I tell you, family is very important. And my sister's married to Rand Paul, and she's a journalist. And I'm telling you, my little sister is got journalism, basically English major. She's written speeches for Rand. She's done a lot for him as far as her organization. I really, really admire her for her ability to write, but also to edit. And she said that my book was the best one that she's ever read. And basically, I'm just thrilled to death because I value her opinion so much. And she said it was just amazing. And she's going to get some friends and acquaintances of hers to kind of review it for maybe a movie potential. But it is really getting that opinion, getting that expertise from her. Because my sister doesn't lie. She won't basically just blow up and just, sugarcoat things because I'm her brother. She doesn't do that. She'll tell you exactly the way it is. And she said she had high expectations for this book. So I'm amazed. That made me feel so good to have endorsement from her. I've had several people say they love my books, they love reading them, but for me to get it from a documented source such as that, we got a major from Rose College in Memphis in English. I'm like, wow, that's the best compliment I've ever gotten. It's from my sister, and she doesn't lie. She cut it right to the truth. So I was glad to get that review from her.
I'm sure there's going to be a lot more positive reviews that you'll be getting. So, David, having written 4 books, what advice can you give a writer who's just working on his or her first book?
My biggest thing is writer's block. You hear so much about I can't write. I got writer's block. I can't comprehend what I need to do next. Is it joining? Is it flowing? Do I have it working where it's just going sequential and making sense? I try to eliminate that by sitting and writing my book in segments. I'll write a part of the book, and then for a week or two, or however long it takes, then I think about the next segment. What about the interaction of the characters? What is the sequence going? Where are the settings going? What's the interaction? What is the major thrust of the book?
Mm-hmm.
And then when I get done contemplating how memory, like a photographic memory, I have it in my mind where the book's going. So I'm not struggling on the computer saying, well, what am I doing? Where's this going? I already know where it's going. I know exactly where it's going. So I find that to open up my divergent thinking skills, my creativity. If I'm not getting all traumatized about where the book's going, it frees your mind to think of different ideas that are fresh and new or something you haven't thought of. So that's my suggestion is write your book in segments. Write an outline if you need to. Write your outline, have it by your side when you're writing so you can eliminate that writer's block syndrome.
Mm-hmm. That's a very good suggestion. So, how did you get past those moments when you get demotivated, perhaps? How do you keep yourself motivated to continue finishing all 4 books?
I hate to waste time. I was brought up by a military individual that doesn't like to waste time. If I had so much time invested in something, I promise you that it's going to be completed. And those moments where you have second thoughts and you're, why am I doing this? I'm not going to make any money on this. Money is not the important route why I'd write. I write to give back to people. I write to read my book for a cause. If you read the book, it's going to royalties. I helped out 5 years with Children Advocacy Center, making sure those kids get out of trauma. I rappel off a building for those children. I basically have donated to my mom to make sure that her Arcadia, the place where she was, is going to benefit as well. So I write for a cause. So why don't you read for a cause? Basically, that's what keeps me motivated. Knowing that the end result is that I'm only going to write a book, but I'm going to help somebody in society. We need to do more of that in our communities. We need to be looking out for people that have been traumatized, that basically are living on the edge. We need to have a conscience as a people, not only as a writer, but we need to basically live for a cause. Live for something higher than yourself. Be part of something bigger than yourself, and you will be successful in anything you do.
So, talking about goals, you seem to be very goal oriented. What are your personal and professional goals for your book this year?
Basically, what I want to do is I got a book signing today. I think you and I have talked about that today. And I'm going to maybe do a book signing at Mammoth Cave. I'm going to do a book signing at Arcadia Senior Center, where I purchased a gazebo for people that have dementia. They can go out and relieve themselves from their boring world, because I used to visit my mom. It's just terrible to go through that zombie-like state. So I wanted to give them something to make them feel good about themselves, like my mom always did. She was a hairdresser, always made people feel better about themselves. So this gazebo was purchased on the pretense of the royalties from this book. And I wanted to make sure that that basically is something that is going to change things. So I just wanted to leave that with the readers to know that, hey, do something for a cause bigger than yourself.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you talk about giving back and all that. Do you have plans, perhaps, of writing another book?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's doable. I would like to be a trilogy with the Soul Searcher and then the Jackpot Killer, because I left it open-ending in this last book. So
Oh,
it probably opens itself up to a nice trilogy. And so we can anticipate another book coming down the line that is based on this entire story. Maybe it'll be a saga or a series or something like that, because I have left an opening for a trilogy. So yes, there are plans to write another book.
that's exciting. So I'm sure your readers will be waiting for that. Okay, so um, David, what do you hope readers will take away from Sean's journey and the world you've created in the book?
Well, I want to go back. I want people to understand probably that the world we live in, and I don't want to be negative, I want people to be alerted to the possibilities of what I just mentioned about AI. I want people to take with them the profound sense of societal change. And also, I want to kind of alert them to meteorological phenomenon like we saw with Francine. I live in North Carolina. Those areas that were devastating had never been touched by a hurricane. It's unheard of. The flooding, for example, I used to go to Chimney Rock and hike that area all the time. There's nothing left of Chimney Rock anymore. It's completely devastated. And you can say about, things as conspiracy theorists about, the government wanting the land because of quartz and other precious minerals in the area. That's not the true thing. The true thing is that if we don't stop fossil fuel, which may be already too late, greenhouse gas. Get with your senators, congressmen, write them things about it. That should be empirical proof enough to see what it did to North Carolina and Virginia. I was going to go to the Virginia Creeper to ride my electric bike down it. It basically shut down the whole Virginia Creeper up in the mountains, which is a beautiful area. And we're going to see more of that. So I wanted to bring with them, you have to act now. You have to be active. You have to get off your dumb. If you want to save your planet, and make sure that you have resources for your children and your grandchildren, you're going to have to get active. We're going to have to fight this global warming type of situation with fossil fuel, greenhouse effect, with green technology. I hate to sound like a environmentalist, but it's come to that point. If we don't do something, we're going to lose it, and we're going to lose it big time. So that's my message. Get active, get out there, join Sierra Club, join any kind of organization you can that's going to save this planet.
That's a powerful message. So would you like to invite our viewers and listeners to visit your website?
Yes, I would like to hear from them, get their impressions of all this. And may I add this a little bit? I think that we need to understand that this book is written from imagination from a human being, and I fear that AI will basically superimpose itself where people don't have to do that anymore. I know you mentioned that before, but that's another thing that I'd like to leave with the audience. And yes, you can contact me anytime on my website. I will do due diligence to get back with you. I will answer any questions you may have. In fact, I welcome any kind of email, calls, chat, text, however you want to reach me.
Okay. And it's thejackpotkiller.com, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. So, David, that brings us to the end of today's episode. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your insights into the world of writing and about your latest book. So The Jackpot Killer by David Ashby is available in hardcover, softcover, and ebook in Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, Ex Libris online bookstore, and other reseller sites. So part of the royalties will be donated to Arcadia Memory Care in Bowling Green, Kentucky. So be sure to check out his work. You don't want to miss it. So thanks everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you next time with another exciting author interview. Until then, happy reading!